Stevens on the Inside. A short story. Written by Josh Jamieson. It was pill time again. He wasn't even sure what he was taking anymore. His day consisted of the same TV shows, lunch, more shows, more pills, then on to a walk around the grounds for some exercise, then dinner and more shows. The same thing, every day. Every once in a while, there would be a new face in the hallway to whom he would say,
"Hey, I'm Steven."
That of course was the single most exciting moment of most of his days. Steven couldn't even remember how long he had been in the facility anymore. The nurses were very nice and spoke to him daily, even helped him hobble through the walkways and around the grounds. They explained to him why the fence around the grounds seemed to be so daunting. It turned out that some of the other guests of the facility were not as coherent as he was, so they needed to have safety measures in place for them. Steven was content enough with life. He felt old and tired, and his body ached and hurt with every motion. He could not remember much of life before the facility, but he knew he had worked hard for his relatively easy life. So, he had decided, after much internal debate, that he was going to enjoy it. On a Tuesday, like any other, Steven was laying down in his bed, right after the second round of pills for the morning, when he felt something with a sharp corner poke his arm as he crawled into bed. He hadn't noticed anything when he got up, or when he was lying there earlier in the morning watching his shows. He tried to ignore it, laid in bed for a while, and attempted to watch his shows until the thoughts marching through his head got the better of him. He began to think maybe a rat had chewed into his mattress, though he had never seen even the smallest of vermin in the facility. He got off the mattress again and checked the time.
Good, at least 2 hours until they come with afternoon pills.
He slowly began the process of lifting up the edge of the mattress, inch by inch, moving it to a spot on the edge of the bed where he could better access the whole thing. He noticed nothing odd about the mattress. He was about to push the mattress back into feet, when he felt the hole in the bottom side. He ran his hands along the bottom of the mattress, feeling a ragged slit that had been cut into the mattress from beneath. He reached inside and probed his fingers around for the object that he had poked his arm with, when his fingers brushed against something smooth and hard, in the otherwise soft and fluffy stuffing of the bed. He grabbed what felt like the corner of a small square object, and guided it out of the opening. He realized that he was holding a black leather journal. Steven thought,
Why would someone possibly be hiding a journal inside of a mattress?
Steven thought that he should probably turn in this journal to one of the nurses, as it likely belonged to whoever lived in this room, before he did. Steven wasn't a stupid man. He was well aware of what this place really was. The only reason a person would vacate a room would be because they grew too old to stick around any longer, kick the bucket, and take that long gurney ride down the hallway, and never come back. He had witnessed a covered bed or two wheeled toward the exit at the end of the hall, though most guests seemed to actively ignore it. Steven thought it wouldn't be right to open the journal, with its well-maintained pages, behind its tempting black leather cover. He told himself that the thought had not even crossed his mind to pull back the string and open the journal to find out what was hidden within its pages. He said out loud to himself,
It would be wrong to read anything in here. Who knows what it could be?
At the same time, he began to read the words on the first page. The pages were crisp in his fingers as he read. My name is Edgar, and I don't know how long I have. This place is not what it seems. Steven thought.
This place is not what it seems. What place?
He looked at the book again, front and back, trying to discern if it was some piece of fiction. Though he came to the conclusion that it did indeed have to be some sort of journal, given it was handwritten and there were errors all over. Stephen was no English major, or at least he did not think so, but he knew that a page was not supposed to be filled with that many exclamation marks and commas. Stephen read on.
You may think that you can trust the nurses, or the doctors, or even the janitors, but you can't. Every one of them is working for them. I don't know how long I can last. I don't know how long this journal will make it without being discovered, but if I can help one other soul, it will all be worth it. I will chronicle everything. I will fight to make it known what they do here. If you are reading this, now you must do the same. It is now your sacred duty, as it is mine, to carry the burden of knowledge and save another.
Stephen was reading with his mouth open at this point. This could be nothing more than a joke, right? He had seen nothing but support from the nurses, and the doctors were always checking in. Stephen stopped short at that thought. When had anyone ever seen doctors that checked in on their patients, as often as his doctors met with him? Every day, at least once, but maybe as often as 3 times in one day? He pondered on this as he began to slide his bed back together, the journal lying next to his pillows. Surely, no one would miss the journal now. This would be an interesting change to his routine, a fun little read. Stephen thought out loud.
It couldn't hurt anything, could it?
The next morning, he awoke to the same alarm as every day, the radio slowly bringing him to consciousness with the last few notes of an old jazz tune, by Ella Fitzgerald, and a disc jockey, with his smooth golden voice saying, "Good morning on this beautiful Tuesday," as he cut off the alarm. He stretched, and then realized that he couldn't find the journal once he began to probe around the bed for it. He was immediately afraid that he had left it where someone had seen it, then they had taken it from him so he couldn't read any more of the hidden journal. He immediately realized the absurdity of the thought, and laughed. He must have just dropped it, though when he looked around the floor, he did not see it anywhere. He realized that in his last pill-dazed stupor of the night, he must have put it back in the one place he knew no one would possibly find it. Those last pills they gave him before bed made him feel very dizzy and tired. No wonder he could barely remember replacing the journal back under the mattress. He pulled the mattress out, and found the journal was right where it had been the first time. He began to read as Edgar told a tale of how the staff at the facility was really conducting experiments on the patients after hours. The worst patients that were now walking around the grounds in a zombie-like stupor were the failed experiments, though no one would ever be the wiser because those people were already here for life. There was nowhere for them to go, and no one to come looking for them to help them. Edgar wrote on about how it seemed to change just a little at first, because they had begun to do the same to him early in his writing. They began by asking to change his meds, then taking him to a special room for therapy. Though this special room actually contained a metal chair that was hooked to all of these machines that hurt him, and made his brain feel funny. Stephen had wondered about the validity of Edgar's writing so far, but the manner of Edgar's writing began to change the further he got. Even the style of handwriting began to change. It got sloppier, slower, more deliberate, but still somehow worse. Stephen could see the digression of Edgar from this storyteller of great detail into something else. Dinner time came, and the nurse came in to see Stephen reading the journal, as Stephen had been so transfixed by the latest developments of Edgar's stories, that he hadn't realized that the nurse would be walking in any time. He yelped as she walked in, and he threw the journal into the air, the sight of the nurse legitimately scaring him for the first time that he could remember. The nurse stopped and looked at him for a moment, then walked back out of the room. The door slowly closed behind her. Stephen took this brief moment to hide the journal away, grabbing another book from his nightstand. The nurse walked back in with her tray of medication moments later, walking slowly to the bed. As he tried to smile to her, he could see something slightly different in her eyes. Where she was usually jovial and sweet, at this particular moment she seemed off. Was she scared? Was she being aggressive? He couldn't quite tell, other than he knew that she seemed different than the last time that he saw her mere hours before. She tried to sound pleasant, but her voice cracked as she said, "Evening, Mr. S. How are we tonight? Just so you know, we decided to change your meds up just a little tonight, so you will see a blue one over here instead of." The sound of her voice trailed off, and Stephen's heart dropped. The line,
"It started small, by simply changing a couple of medications here and there,"
screamed out to him from Edgar's pages. He stared at the nurse as she spoke, but didn't hear anything. His heart was pounding and his face felt hot. This was not happening, was it? Edgar was just some crazy person, not someone who had really lived through something you would see in a movie. Edgar, who sounded so crazy just hours before, and whose writings Stephen had been reading for fun, was not actually telling him exactly what was about to happen, was he? The first cup of pills, Stephen recognized, so he hesitantly took the pills and swallowed them. The second cup had 2 blue pills though that he did not recognize. Stephen looked at the pills, and then looked at the nurse in the eyes. He could see something off in her eyes. Was it fear? Was this nurse feeling bad for what she was about to do to the man she had been sweet-talking, for who knows how long? Stephen was not about to sit around and find out. While their eyes had been locked, Stephen had slid his hand to the lamp on the table next to his bed. The nurse looked to her side just in time to see him swing it hard at her head. The connection made a solid thunk, and she made an odd sound and crumpled to the floor, obviously unconscious. Stephen wasn't sure what to do, but knew that now was time for action. He decided to make a run for it. He knew that the doors were all secured at night, so he grabbed the nurse's name badge and ran out of his room into the hall. The long hall had a door on each end, both with glowing exit signs above. He chose the closest one to him, and began to run as well as he could. The pills he had been given, though, were beginning to take effect though, dizzying his head and making each step less and less steady. He used the badge to unlock the door. An electronic buzz and click allowed him to push through the exit door at the end of the hall. Just after he cleared the door, he ran into 2 doctors in the stairwell, one of which he immediately recognized as the doctor that had visited him twice that very day. He shoved past both of the men in the white lab coats, and just as he was about to run down the first step, his doctor grabbed his arm. The man was yelling at him, "You must calm down, sir." Stephen fought back though, pushing the doctor hard with both hands in the chest, attempting to free himself from the doctor's grip. The younger man though, being much sturdier in his footing, didn't budge, and Stephen propelled himself backwards, hard. His lower back hit the railing of the stairs, and his upper body forced his top-heavy torso over the rail and into a spin down the 3 flights of stairs. He began to scream as the world spun around him, though the sound did not last long. His body began to ricochet off of the sides of the protective guardrails. The sounds ended completely after a final thud. The sudden landing was unforgiving on the flat, concrete floor 3 flights below. The last bits of light were fading from his eyes, but he saw the word exit, lit brightly in red above the door in front of him, as if beaconing him to what lay beyond. The 2 doctors who had just witnessed a patient's attempt at escape now stood over the same man at the bottom of the stairs. They were panting hard, as they had just run the 3 flights of stairs in a hopeful attempt to see if he had miraculously survived the fall. They found immediately and definitively that he had not. They had already alerted the emergency medical staff, and they were now swarming the area. The 2 doctors stood to the side, trying to grasp what they had just witnessed. The first doctor asked the second, "Did you know him?" "I do not recognize this patient." The second doctor said, "Yes, sadly we thought we were making great strides with him. Until now he had learned to live life very comfortably here, though just recently something unknown has thrown him into a downward spiral. He only was truly coherent on Tuesdays. We were very near to uncovering the mystery behind his delusions with the new medication and MRI mapping of his brain. Though now, I suppose he will make a fantastic case study for the students." The first doctor asked, "What was his name?" The second doctor replied, "Edgar Stevens." This has been Stevens on the Inside, a short story written by Josh Jamieson. Thank you for taking the time to listen to one of my short stories. If you enjoyed the story of Edgar Stevens, please subscribe to my channel, where you can hear my other short stories and projects. I am an aspiring author who is currently looking for representation for my novel. Have a fantastic day.